Thanks very much. It's great to be here. This is the closest I'm ever going to get to being Britney Spears, right? Like a really fat, ugly, hairy member of NSYNC with the microphone. So I'm going to talk about a bunch of different things. And thanks to Aldous and everyone for inviting me. There are a couple of people I know watching the live stream who were like, do I just keep clicking on Aldous until I get it? I was like, you keep clicking on Aldous, you're going to get invited to speak. Right, so I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of different things that I've done wrong over the last couple of years, of which there are very many. So I'll tell you a little bit about why I'm here first. So how many people know what this is? Okay, so I'm largely here because of my parents, like I guess most of us, and because my dad was a nerd, right? So my dad bought me a Sinclair Spectrum 48K computer back in the early 80s, and this is what I learned how to write code on, right? This had rubber buttons. Most people's watch straps now probably have more processing power than these computers had, but back then you could buy magazines that you would physically copy the text out of, type it in, and execute it, and that's how you could play games, right? It was a very painstaking process, but that's how I learned how to write code. So I used to write games and name them after girls that I liked, which, like in the 1980s, being an entrepreneur was way less cool than it is nowadays. So it was a spectacular failure. But I've always loved computers and I've always been involved. And so 10 years ago, I started my first company doing content for big businesses and doing digital. And we did a whole bunch of interesting things. So we ended up building a mobile app, a suite of mobile apps for the Middle East. So this one for Kabul, where you could find out various terrible things that had happened in that city every day. So you could navigate your way around avoiding kidnappings and bombings and a whole bunch of other stuff. So ran a startup in Kabul for a little while, and we sold that over there. And then, how many people here played Farmville? Or how many people are willing to admit? So like 3 honest people, right? Like I know, and I know the rest of you did it. So Farmville, for those of you who don't know, is a farm management program, right? You could harvest crops, you could have cows, you could plant fields, you could do a whole bunch of different things, but it was extremely spammy. And so every time you wanted to do something, it would say, oh, invite 5 of your friends to help you harvest your strawberry crop. And what happened back in 2010 was basically everyone started seeing this on their Facebook news feed all the time, right? So X has harvested strawberries, Y has bought new cows, et cetera, et cetera. So it was like extremely irritating and extremely spammy. And so a lot of people rebelled against it. This is like the fucking mildest thing that I could find, right? There is much worse than this out there. And so not to conform to national stereotypes, but some friends and I were sitting in a bar in Dublin talking about this, going, like, it's super annoying that we're seeing all of this stuff. And the idea quickly came about that, well, what if you built something that would allow you to kind of mess with the people who were playing Farmville? And so we came up with the idea of Farm Villain. And so Farm Villain basically allowed you to screw with your friends, right? So in this instance, you can see you could give your neighbors cows mad cow disease. You could salt the earth on their land, you could burn down their barns, you could do all of these horrible things. And so we launched it as frankly, as a little bit of a joke. And it was a joke that kind of very quickly turned serious. So within 6 weeks, we had about 1 million people playing it every day. So it went properly, I guess, viral, as they say. We were generating enormous revenue from I mean, like every internet startup, it was like, shit, we've got all these users, what do we do? It's like, we better stuff a load of ads into it. And so we did, and it turned out that was a very profitable thing to do back in 2010 on Facebook, right? Slightly less so now. And so Farmville was a big success. And then GameStop, who some of you may know, our big company, came in and were like, that traffic is incredible, the idea is really good, we want it. And so they bought it, which was great. I subsequently went to work for a company called Keep, which is a rewards network. So they reward you for your achievements in games and apps rather than showing you crappy ads. And I'm still on the advisory board there. So I do a bunch of work for Techstars. So as Aldous said, we're probably one of the bigger accelerators in the world. So we've got 23 locations, I think, now. So we've 3 programs in London, a regular program, fintech program, and a new one that we just announced with Virgin, 2 in Berlin, a bunch around the US, and lots more to be announced. One that just launched in Israel, and one in Cape Town in South Africa. So if anyone's interested in applying, particularly if you've got a fintech startup, come talk to me. And I also sit in a bunch of boards. So Lingvist are an Estonian company who went through Techstars a couple of years ago. I sit on their board. Brandwatch is an amazing social media monitoring company. I'm an advisor there, and Keep is still going, and I'm an advisor there as well. So I've got a reasonable amount, I guess, of experience. And so before we start, right, this is what everyone wants, right? Most people who are entrepreneurs here are like, yes, build product, question mark, question mark, question mark, lots of users, profit. The reality is a little bit more like this. Right, there's way more of a process that goes into this. So you have your initial kind of launch and everyone is super excited, and then the novelty wears off and you start feeling sorry for yourself, and you have little improvements that you release over time. You do something inept and it all falls apart, and occasionally you run out of money and the company dies basically, or if you're really lucky, it goes to the promised land and you become a unicorn, or whatever people want to call it nowadays, and you get acquired. So a little bit of reality, right? It's very difficult to build a business, right? 90% of businesses that start will fail. It's important to learn from those failures, right? Alongside all of the things that I talked about early on, I also had a bunch of businesses that didn't work out, and I'm going to talk about some of them later on. But it's not all bad, right? This is the first website that the guys at CERN released back in 1991. And so you think we're like 25 years or 26 years into the internet. We're 8 years into the mobile era, right? It's 8 years ago this week that Google and the Open Handset Alliance launched Android. It's 8 years since the first iPhone came out. So we're still in very early days of mobile. We're in like really early days of blockchain, of IoT, of all of these different things. So there has probably never been a better time to launch a business, but just don't expect that it's going to be like this all the time. So some do's and don'ts, right? And some of these are really basic, but keep a notebook. And I don't care if it's a real one or if you use Evernote or if you use the notes application on your phone or whatever, Microsoft Word, it doesn't matter. But make notes, right? I have books and books and books filled with stupid ideas. And like somewhere in the middle of them is an idea that might someday be useful. So keep notes. All of this stuff that occurs to you when you're standing in the shower or when you're on the toilet or when you're walking along on the street or something like this. Like make notes of this stuff because there's a reason it pops into your head, right? It's really useful. How many people here have read a book in the last month? Okay, that's really good. So the last time I asked this question, it was like a stupendously low number of hands went up. How many people have read a book that isn't related to what they're doing on a day-to-day basis? Okay, so slightly fewer. So people should read all the time. One of the first questions I ask in interviews is like, what's the last book you read? What are the websites that you visit every day, right? So whether it's books that you're reading, whether it's Hacker News, whether it's Reddit Technology, anywhere, you should always be reading and staying interested, right? The most interesting people that I interview for Techstars, or the most interesting people that I've invested in personally, are the ones that are interesting, right? The ones that you kind of go, well, I'd like to go and have a cup of coffee with this person, or I'd go for dinner with this person, or I would go for a beer with this person. So read all the time. How many people here are working on an idea that is so amazing that if they told anyone, that person would immediately run off and steal the idea on them? Okay, so more than a few, right? So someone told me a long time ago when I had an idea that was so amazing that if I told anyone, they would go ahead and steal it. And I'm going to steal their words now. Is basically like 10 other people are already working on that idea, and they're all smarter than you are. Right? Tell people about your ideas. Right? Nothing is so incredibly amazing. Like maybe if you're a PhD, nuclear physicist at CERN, you might want to save it for your Nobel Prize. But in general terms, right? Most people's ideas are like it's Uber for dogs or something like this. Right? So. So you wouldn't fucking believe some of the stuff that I've been pitched, right? So if anyone wants to pitch an Uber for dogs, let's just park that thought now. So talk to people, right? Talk to people, and when they talk back to you, listen to what they say, right? If you're going to come and talk to me or any of the other amazing speakers that we've had here today, or any of the VCs that are in the room, or any fellow entrepreneurs, and you ask them their opinion, don't kind of stand there nodding at them going, I want you to finish talking so I can talk at you some more. I'm not receiving any of this information. Like, listen to the stuff that people say back to you. Usually, when people are giving you advice, it's because they've gone through these experiences before and they've had painful versions of these experiences. So listen to what people say. Scratch itches that people have. Again, you'll be amazed at how many people come and pitch me an idea. So they go, we've got this idea, we're going to disintermediate something or other in this market. And you kind of go, well, why? Like, does anyone actually need this? And in a lot of cases, most people can't answer that question, right? Who needs this product right now? The companies that do really well, and it's something we'll probably touch on in the panel in an hour's time, but the companies that do really well are people who come to me and go, I've been a lawyer for 15 years and I had this massive problem and I've started a company that solves it. And you kind of go, okay, you know the market, you're scratching an itch that exists, right? You're thinking about your unfair advantage, right? If you come to me and say, I want to start a business for lawyers. And you go, oh, what have you done for the last 10 years? It's like, oh, I've been a gardener, right? It's going to be very difficult for you. Whereas if you come to me and go, I've got a business that's targeting people who work in banks because I've been a bank teller for 15 years, this is a problem I've witnessed day to day, right? What is the unfair advantage that you can bring? Are you doing a medical devices company because you've been a drug rep salesperson for 20 years and you know every single person in that market? What's the unfair advantage that you can bring? Does it pass the grandparent test? How many people know how they pitch movies in Hollywood? Right, so Hollywood is a very basic process, and it's not dissimilar to pitching ideas in Silicon Valley as well, where you come in and you go, it's like this, but for that, right? And so the best example is Die Hard on a boat is the movie Speed 2. Jaws in space is the movie Alien. Right? So it's Uber for dogs. I'm joking about it, but like, if you can kind of help me understand what that business is, if you come to me and go, we're going to disintermediate the kind of artisanal creators market in the MENA region, I've no idea what that means. It's like, oh, we're going to do Etsy, but for that part of the world. And you go, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting, right? So if you can't explain what your idea is to your grandparents, it's not so good. When you're talking to people at events like this, and these kinds of events are amazing because you get to meet a bunch of people with very different perspectives, don't pitch them, right? Ask them questions. So say things, and ask open questions, right? How do you solve this problem at the moment? How can we help fix this problem? Are you thinking? So ask people open questions. Don't come up and go, I'm building an Uber for dogs. Would you like to invest? I need 10K, right? Ask me some open questions, like, how do you think this is, is this a problem that people actually have? No. Okay, maybe I need to rethink my idea. So ask open questions. Lose your shame. So I don't really like pitching people, right? I find it very awkward. I guess I'm slightly introverted. So in a room with a bunch of people who I don't know, and how many other people do this, right? A lot of people I don't know, so it's like, oh, I've got a really interesting text message I need to look at now, rather than go and talk to anyone else. Right? I hate it, but you've got to lose your shame when you're doing early stage stuff. You've got to be willing to go and talk to people about your idea and put yourself out there, right? And if you want some inspiration for losing your shame, this is the first version of the Google website, right? It's pretty ugly. This is the first version of Facebook that launched in Harvard in 2004. This is the current version of the Yahoo website. Not a lot has changed in 20 years there. And Apple, right? Paragons of design, and this was the best that they could come up with their first website, right? So if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product you have launched too late, is Reid Hoffman's advice. Some important things to think about. Danger Will Robinson for fans of Lost in Space. Almost every Techstars program that I have mentored on over the last couple of years, and almost every other accelerator program that I've mentored on, we've had a co-founder breakup, right? And when these happen, they're usually pretty ugly. It's a very intense period of time that you go through when you start a business with someone, and so when things don't go correctly, it's very difficult. And so the guys from Andreessen Horowitz had a great blog post about this the other day, about like, you almost need a co-founder prenup. Because if one party or two, so we had an instance with a company a couple of months ago where one of the co-founders was like, I'm not happy with things anymore, I'm leaving. And they basically got on a plane and went to another country. I'm not going to name the country because you could probably then guess who the country was. But they went to another country and they turned their phone off. And they had taken all of the code repositories with them as well. So this guy was kind of standing there going, hey, we've got great business X. It's like, oh, can you show me? It's like, oh no, my co-founder has literally run away with everything, right? So make a prenup. One of the reasons that Israeli companies do really well is that people have gone through military service together. So when we interview companies from Israel who were pitching for Techstars, they say, well, we've served 3 years together in the military. You go, okay, well, you've probably been through a whole bunch of various different experiences, so we know that you can kind of handle the stress that you're going to be put under for the next 3 months of Techstars and potentially the next 10 years of your business. So make prenups. How many people here know what vesting is? Okay, so everyone here should know what vesting is and what options are and how that works, right? So vesting is the idea that, let's say you start a business with someone and you own 51% and they own 49%, right? That equity accrues over time. So rather than you both owning it on day one, that accrues over 3 years or 4 years. And so when you get VC investment, they will force you to do vesting, but you should also do it with your co-founders, because basically what ends up happening is if one person walks away after 3 months, they still own 49% of your business. You're kind of screwed, right? It's very difficult to make decisions, very difficult to raise investment, et cetera, et cetera. So make sure that everyone in your business, from employees to advisors, vests over a period of time. Obviously not investors, because like, I'm not even going to listen to that conversation, but everyone that you employ or hire as an advisor, make sure that they vest over time. It's really, really important. And if you remember nothing else from this talk, go and figure out vesting. Get a lawyer, just in case. So we had a Chuck Norris character in Farm Villain, and Chuck Norris's lawyers didn't find it quite as funny as we did, and so we got sued, which wasn't great, right? So don't fuck with Chuck is a key message, and also get a lawyer, right? I mean, you'll spend a bunch of money on it, but it will be worth it in the long run. And you know, with Techstars, we work with amazing law firms for the companies that come through, and it is worth paying for this stuff up front, even if it is your prenup, etc. There was an adage for a long time, like hire slow, fire fast. And a lot of startups that I know are guilty of hiring people really, really slowly, right? The thing that I prefer to do now is you hire people really quickly, right? Trust your gut instinct. You can usually tell within 5 minutes of meeting someone whether or not they're going to be a good employee, whether they're smart, whether they're going to be someone that you want to start a business with, whether it's someone you want to invest in your company, because these are long-term relationships that you're investing in, right? The prenup kind of idea is because a lot of people say when you invest in a company or you start a company with someone, it's like marrying them, right? You're going to be stuck together for a very long time. Hiring someone is not quite like marrying them, right? It's like dating Tinder. You can swipe left at some point. So hire fast and fire fast. If you feel after 2 months that someone is not performing or they're not living up to what they should do, fire them really quickly. We've had numerous instances, both in my own companies and elsewhere, where we've taken ages to hire someone, they've come in, they haven't been perfect, and you've just moved them into like 15 different jobs, hoping that eventually, like, they're involved in, some nebulous area of the company, and you eventually hope they'll find something that they're useful at. It's much better to get rid of those people reasonably early. Do PR, right? So the Bill Gates quote is, I'd spend my last dollar on PR. Paid acquisition is a difficult thing to do, especially if you're building kind of mobile apps. Customer acquisition cost is really high if you're doing B2B stuff. So paid acquisition is anywhere between like $1 and $5, and a quality customer, if you're buying one using Facebook ads, can be way higher. Spend your money on PR. So, I mean, with Lingvist, we probably added 60,000 new users in a day from being featured on Product Hunt. And we also caught the attention of a bunch of investors. So, AngelList, again, how many people here have businesses? How many of those businesses? Keep your hand up if you're listed on AngelList. Okay, so if you're not listed on AngelList, it's like you don't exist to a lot of, certainly to investors, right? So you need to be on there. Product Hunt is a great one, TechCrunch, Tech.eu, Crunchbase, etc. All of these places will get you users. Hacker News, if you've got how many people use Hacker News? Okay, so Hacker News is the news site that Y Combinator run. It's well worth going on to. If you've got a thin skin and you don't like being insulted, perhaps don't post your product on there if it's not 100% ready, but it is worth engaging with the community on there. For me as an investor, and as someone who buys services from startup companies, if you're sending me something, spell check it. Right? The quickest way to make me think that you're an idiot is to send me something that kind of doesn't read properly, and that's an issue, right? Where English is not a first language, it could be an issue, but there are people that you can pay to do this, right? The last speaker spoke about freelancer.com, right? Spend $10, get someone to proofread the stuff that you're going to send out. It will pay dividends in the long run. Be smart and target the right people. So there was a joke a while ago that like every cartoon that had ever been in the New Yorker magazine could have the caption, "Hi, I'd like to add you to my professional network on LinkedIn." It's worth looking it up on Google. It's quite funny. So target the right people in the right way. And here's the thing that happens in Europe that I've never seen happen in the States, where I'll speak at a conference like this, and then someone will send me a Facebook friend request. It's like, like Facebook is where I talk to people who I've at least like maybe had a beer with or a coffee with or dinner with or something else. Like if you want to add me, connect with me on Twitter, connect with me on LinkedIn, any of these different places, but not Facebook. If you're going to connect with people on LinkedIn, give them some context. right? So don't just send a generic LinkedIn request, because a lot of people I know will delete it, say, oh, I met you at Silicon Valley, comes to the Baltics, we talked about my startup, it's Uber for dogs, do you want to connect? No, swipe left. But target the right people, right? So, I mean, again, I get a bunch of emails from people that are like, oh, you know, we're seeking a $15 million growth investment in, you know, my company, we're based in New Zealand, it does X, Y, and Z, and you kind of go, well, it specifically says in my bio that I invest in early stage companies that are usually a little bit closer to home. So target the right people in the right way. And if you want to target journalists or investors or sales partners or anyone else, like follow them on Twitter or favorite or whatever it's called now, like their tweets or reply to them, engage with them, like flatter them a little bit, and then start engaging with them. How many people here use mail merge or templates when they're doing sales, marketing, or investor pitches? Now close your eyes and put your hands up if you do that, because if you don't want anyone else. So straight to my idiot box, right? Straight to either spam or deleted. If you're sending mail merge or templated stuff and you're trying to sell something to someone, and if you're pitching me for an investment, you're selling me something, right? Selling me the concept of your business. So if you're using mail merge or templates, A, I can usually tell. B, it's almost never personalized. And C, it usually formats really weirdly as well. So if you're doing that, it's a surefire way to piss people off, and it's an issue that I have with a couple of companies that I work with. I learn about soft circling and soft commitments. So when you're talking to someone about investing in your business, ask them if you can use their name. So soft circling means that someone goes, I'm pretty interested in your business. I am willing to give you 50K if you meet these conditions. And so soft circling means that you can then go to another investor and go, oh, hey, Eamonn said he'd give me 50K if I hit these, 3 or 4 boxes. So learn about this language. It becomes very important when you're pitching investors. And the last and most important thing about being a startup founder, right, is don't be an asshole. So again, you come back to this kind of idea that going into a relationship with someone as a co-founder or going into a relationship with someone as an investor means that you're going to be stuck with them for a very, very long time. And if people come across as being unpleasant or unsavory or difficult to deal with, or just in general terms a twat, it makes it much more difficult to justify actually giving them any money. So try not to be an asshole to your friends, to your co-workers, to your investors, et cetera, et cetera. You'll make it much easier for people like me to say yes to you. This is a very simple diagram that Will Wheaton, who was Wesley Crusher on Star Trek for fellow nerds, he designed this because he gets a lot of abuse on the internet, right? A lot of people, turns out, don't like Wesley Crusher or, by extension, Will Wheaton. So don't be a dick. This is really important, actually. Really, really important. That's it from me.